moved.
Moved by Putt,
Second.
second by Kreiser. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? I'm sorry, opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is Palmyra Pride. So Dr. Kepler, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Connell, and I believe some of these folks are with us this evening. We have two groups for Palmyra Pride tonight, and the first goes out to our school nursing staff who, during the course of a regular school year, are incredibly busy folks taking care of nearly 3,700 students each and every day. But under these circumstances, extra kudos to Katrina Griffin at the high school, Amanda Stroop at the middle school, and our elementary nurses, Courtney Fackler, Judith Robinson, Amy Lee Yingst, and Lisa Allwine, and then all their substitute nurses that support us as well. We thank them for being on the front lines during this pandemic and caring for our students each and every day. So thank you guys very much. We couldn't operate school without you. And the second Palmyra Pride tonight, and I know that Mr. Klippo was representing Walmart, was trying to be online tonight, but we appreciate Walmart annually. They are a great partner of Palmyra Area School District and the Cougar Foundation. And this year, in the last week, Walmart contributed $10,000 to the Cougar Foundation to help offset costs associated with our middle school outdoor education program. So, Mr. Jason Klippa representing Walmart, we appreciate that partnership and applaud Walmart for their continued support. Thank you to all of those folks.
Yeah, that's absolutely fabulous, and I think I'm pretty confident to say I speak for everybody when, I mean, particularly this year with all the difficult decisions we've had to make, that kind of support in the community is just remarkable. And thank you to Mr. Klippa and Walmart, and certainly all of our nurses for all they do, and just great things to see here this evening.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jim, for sharing that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is President's Report. So I just need to announce that the board did meet on October 14th, 2020 to discuss legal matters. So we'll move on to visitor comments, and we do not have any registered visitor comments for this evening. So we'll move into buildings and grounds. Mr. Kreiser.
Yes, so our Buildings and Grounds Committee last met on October 8th. At that time, Mr. Heath Dresch provided the board with a report of analysis of the district's drinking water. All of our results were favorable and well below limits on lead contamination. Dr. Kepler shared pictures of Northside Elementary's renovations and the status of those great updates that have occurred over there. Ms. Darcy Brenner-Smith reviewed a proposal of GISA amendment with the board, which we will discuss later. And Ms. Jennifer Smith, under public comment, made inquiry pertaining to the gym capacity at the high school for sporting events. And there was discussion regarding allocation of tickets under the new board policy for attendance. The meeting then adjourned at 8:13 p.m. As a result, I have a motion to approve the proposed GISA Amendment number 8 with Reynolds Energy Services and Site Logic for Phase 2 of Northside renovation in the amount of $30,750.
I have a motion to approve proposed GISA Amendment number 8 with Reynolds Energy Services, Inc., Site Logic for Phase 2 of Northside renovations in the amount of $30,750. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ludwig. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. President, the next meeting of Buildings and Grounds Committee is scheduled for Thursday, November 12th, in the regular, immediately following the regular board meeting in the district office, but it's also tentatively scheduled to be held virtually.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kreiser. Moving on to finance, Mr. Putt.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Finance Committee last met on October 8th, 2020. Darcy Brenner Smith reviewed the final budgetary transfers for 2019-2020. Darcy provided the board with proposed 2020-2021 Bucks and Boyo transportation contracts. Darcy provided the board with a proposed 2021-2022 budget timeline. Under public comments, Mr. Dave Loudermilk recommended protection for the district for continuity of transportation operations. The meeting adjourned at 8:59 p.m. And from that meeting, I have the following motion. I would like to make a motion to approve the final budgetary transfers for 2019-2020.
I have a motion to approve the final budgetary transfers for 2019-2020. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Kreiser. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
What was the final number for the budgetary transfers?
I don't have that readily available.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns?
There's no updates to any of the numbers from what was presented at Finance Committee last meeting, correct?
Correct.
Okay, any other questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
The next meeting of the Finance Committee will be held immediately following the Buildings and Grounds Committee on November 12th, 2020 in the district boardroom or virtually if necessary.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Putt. Next on the agenda is staffing and administration, and I believe, Mr. Putt, you're going to take that one as well.
I am, sir. Thank you. The Staffing and Administration Committee last met on October 8, 2020. The board reviewed the policies as listed in preparation for the first reading on October 22nd at the regular board meeting. There was a public comment from Trina Groff, who spoke on leadership in sports. The meeting adjourned at 9:07. And from that meeting, we have following motion. I'd like to approve, I'd like to make a motion to approve the second reading of the following board policies, policy 904 and policy 907.
I have a motion to approve the second reading of the following board policies, policy 904 and policy 907. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Gilligan. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
Has Jim gone over these to make sure they're correct?
There was quite a bit of discussion on that since last time. We're actually all good, even on the other policy.
Awesome.
You were so convincing, Mr. Kreiser, you got me to believe that there was error in them. The tobacco citation in those is simply under the definitions section, which is why it looked like there was an error, but it's actually correct based on PSBA's recommended policy services.
Okay, any other questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Excuse me, I did we have a second? I'm not sure I caught that.
Yes,
Yeah.
Sue Gilligan. Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. I'd like to recommend to approve the first reading of the following board policies. Policy 113.1.2.4, 123, and 123.2 as listed.
I have a motion to recommend to approve the first reading of the board policies as listed. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Gilligan. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
Again, no changes since review in committee.
That is correct. No changes.
This is only first reading too.
Gotcha. Thanks.
All right, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. And my final motion, I'd like to make a motion to approve the Staffing and Administration Committee items as noted on the Staffing and Administration Consent Agenda.
I have a motion to approve Staffing and Administration Committee items as noted on the Staffing and Administration Consent Agenda. Excuse me, do I have a second?
Second?
Second by Fisher. Any questions, comments, or concerns, or anything that needs further explanation?
I would just highlight, as we normally do, and thank Karen Lynch for a full career as an elementary teacher here in Palmyra, and wish Karen well in her retirement at the end of the first semester.
Good luck, Karen, in your retirement. Thank you for your service. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
The next Staffing and Administration Board meeting will be held in the district boardroom on October 22nd after the curriculum committee and the district, well, virtually because we are virtual.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Putt. We'll move on to reports, superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Connell. Start by highlighting several of our students that attend the Lebanon County Career and Technology Center. These students are 2020-21 National Technical Honor Society inductees. Brian Buffenmeyer in auto body, Jackson Feeser in law enforcement, Hunter Garrison in welding, Nicholas McNally in plumbing, Tristan Morawski in electromechanical, and Harley Yutz in law enforcement. So congratulations to those 6 Palmyra High School students. Additional congratulations at the CTC are for Palmyra High School student Sean Messick. Sean is in the Culinary Arts program and was selected as the Rotary Student of the Month for October. And also congratulations to Katarina Bauer, Kat Bauer, for being selected as Palmyra Area High School's Rotary Student of the Month for September. And congratulations to Caitlin Becker, who is our October Rotary Student of the Month. Well-deserving group of students. Some other highlights. Unfortunately, the district realized the passing of a parent in 3 different family situations since the beginning of the year. And our staff came together on a dress down day and provided monetary contributions totaling $1,000 that we were able to divide out to those 3 families to help them with their needs. October 12th, an in-service day led by Dr. Spagnolo and our principals. Also, most of that day was provided for teachers in preparation and planning for their continued work. An extra kudo to our nursing staff. They partnered with CVS and held a flu shot clinic for staff with over 100 shots given out on those 2 evenings, and we ran out of shots, and they've actually, I saw in an email today, they're scheduling yet another evening to provide additional flu shots. Tomorrow, the first of 5 early dismissal days associated with our plan for teacher preparedness. And again, we'll be reviewing the effectiveness of these days and reporting back to you, the board, in November. Proud of leadership of Carolyn Richards and Dr. Kathy Setlock. As here, we just recently learned that the Federal Office of Special Ed Programs, or OSEP, they review student outcomes and compliance data to evaluate the 50 states in the United States. And Pennsylvania was recently notified that the Commonwealth met requirements, which is the highest standard. And in addition, then states make annual determinations, and Palmyra received that same meet expectations for the year 2018. And again, that's the highest designation. So kudos to all of our staff, teachers, and administrators that work in the special education for us. We recently learned that Clark Schaefer, if you recall, we had a state championship girls volleyball team, and Coach Schaefer was named the 2019-20 PIAA Girls Volleyball Coach of the Year and is now a candidate for National Coach of the Year. So congratulations to Clark. And Dr. Spagnuolo, we thank her for her hard work on the Flexible Instructional Day, or FIDS. That is, she has a presentation for you tonight in curriculum, but we've been approved for 3 years that will allow us to hold up to 5 days of school when there's inclement weather, that we won't have to make those days up. So she'll give you more specifics on that later this evening. And then you see some upcoming events. They're much fewer in these times, but PSAT testing was recently held. So I guess it's not upcoming anymore. So that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Kepler. Next, we'll move on to the student representative report. Do we have our student rep this evening?
I did not see Gracie on.
Yeah, if the student rep, if she has a substitute, if somebody's on and can raise their virtual hand for us. Yeah, I'm not seeing a report tonight, Mr. Connell.
Okay, so we'll move on to CTC.
Thank you, sir. Couple things. We are expecting a refund this year from the CTC back to the district. The amount is yet to be determined, but we are expecting some sort of a refund back, which should help out a little bit. And we are looking at having an Act 80 day because the CTC is, the teachers are using Schoology for the first time and a few other virtual programs to help with instruction, especially if and when we end up going virtually or partially virtually. And these are teachers that typically don't use programs like this. So they're asking us for an Act 80 day. Dr. Kepler and I have been discussing it. I think we're sort of pushing for November 6th, which is already a half day and early dismissal day for Palmyra. So it would have the least, I think, the least amount of effect on the students' education out there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Putt. We'll move on to Rec Commission.
Yes, so Rec Commission just met last evening. We reviewed the finalized intergovernmental agreement. There was discussion and review and approval of the 2021 rec budget. Otherwise, there was just an update on the statistics of those participating in winter sports youth programs.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kreiser. Next, IU13.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. The IU13 board met on October 14th. There were 2 board actions. We elected Ms. Stacy Ritter to serve as the representative from Manheim Central School District until June 30th, 2021. And we also approved $10,688, excuse me, $10,688 and $800.43, I'm sorry, in disbursements. And also one final act of new business, and that was to approve an IU13 comprehensive plan steering committee. So they'll be working on that. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Fisher. Bernie, do you want to say something?
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Connell. I just wanted to, Mr. Klippa had a work emergency tonight, but was able to now join us. So we just wanted to circle back to Palmyra Pride. And John, if you want to unmute Mr. Klippa, you might want to say a few words. But again, on behalf of the administration and the board and our entire staff, particularly our middle school and our middle school students, 7th and 8th grade this year, we can't say enough about Walmart's support, Jason. And on an annual basis, you're there for us as a school district, as a business partner. And this year, more than any other, we have that need. And our students in outdoor ed fundraising will be greatly thankful for the support of Walmart. So thank you. I don't know if you'd like to say a few words.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
We can.
Yes.
I apologize for being late. I had a conflict right at 6 o'clock, but it ended in about 10 minutes and I was able to hop on. So thanks, Dr. Kepler, and to the board that's on. I can't tell who's on. I'm doing this from my phone, but yeah, when the emails came out about the fundraising efforts for the outdoor ed program, I thought this was a great opportunity. I have firsthand knowledge of how amazing the program is. My son Max is a junior now and went through the outdoor ed program a few years ago. And I know it's one of the most popular programs that the kids are able to participate in. I think it's a really unique experience. I didn't have this growing up. I wasn't able to do this. So when Max told me about, how amazing it was, and I got to see that firsthand, dropping them off and picking them up and hearing all the stories. So when the call came out about, obviously it's a tough year for everybody with COVID and budget shortfalls. I sent a note out to Dr. Kepler and the other folks in charge and Miss Wader running the program and just said, hey, is there any way that Walmart can help and step up with a community grant? They said, absolutely. So we were able to do a Walmart Foundation grant for $10,000. I know it's not a huge amount, but as you guys know, every little bit helps. So I'm hoping, I don't know what the sort of deadline is for cutoffs, but I'm hoping that you guys are able to run the program this year because I know how valuable it is for the kids. So just so proud to be able to support something in my own hometown and home district and something that means so much to the kids and the parents as well. So thank you guys.
Thank you. And I would just respectfully disagree that it's certainly not a little bit that helps. That is a vast and significant amount that's going to go a long way to keeping this program here for the kids. And we're all incredibly grateful and thankful to you and to Walmart for that significant amount of support.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Clary.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Mr. Klippa.
much.
And for your knowledge, in November at the curriculum meeting, we have the middle school team coming to present an update on where they're at with the program that we're looking to put forward for outdoor ed this coming spring.
Yeah, and I actually over this past weekend, we did the fundraiser as well out at Gretna. It was a beautiful Saturday. So my wife, Melissa, and our little guy, Alex, all went out and took a hike, and it looked like it was fairly well attended. So hopefully that helps. So I'll be interested to hear if the program's able to stay afloat this year and moving forward through this. So thanks, guys. Hi, Christine, if you're on.
Hey, Mr. Klippa, nice to see you. Thank you for your donation.
Thank you, Mrs. Santana.
Absolutely.
See you guys.
Thank you. Okay,
Bye-bye.
we'll move on to the next item, which is Cougar Foundation.
Yeah, and Bernie, I'm going to need your help here a little bit, but so that board also met this week. So I've been loving life here, Mr. President. But we just snuck in enough for quorum and reviewed 5 grants, 3 of which for now were asked to go back and revisit the grant and perhaps take a different approach given COVID impacts. 1 grant was approved. And Dr. Kepler, I need help with the final one. I forget.
Sure. There was a grant approved for teaching supplies at Northside Elementary, various flashcards, clocks, items that are our aides in that building can grab quickly and be using with individual and small groups of students. And the second grant was for Pine Street, third grade, where each of those classrooms will have access to digital version of Storyworks. Scholastic Magazine is how we.
Right, that's what I forgot. Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. And then the only other key update for the board, and kind of to just piggyback right on the heels of what Mr. Klippa said, the foundation got an update from Mr. Bell on the status of all the fundraising, and with the amount from Walmart, with the amount on GoFundMe, and the amount that Mr. Potter and Mr. Bell are doing through significant fundraising efforts, I believe we are very, very close and inching ever so close to the amount needed to fund the budget levels that we would have for this year. I think we're a few thousand short, but I believe we're still nearly 45,000 of overall funds at this point. So just remarkable from that group.
That is good news. Okay, next item is library report, and I think Larry's not here, so we'll move on to tax collection.
Hi, Karen here. We did not have a meeting this month, so next month I'll have a report for you.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Next is legislative region report.
I have nothing this month.
Okay, and then lastly, HAC. I don't know if we have any word on HAC, whether this is still
We've
viable.
reached out to them, Mr. Connell, and still no update.
Okay. Any other reports? Okay. Next item is communications. Any communications?
There was. The board did receive a communication from a familiar name from Lisa Brown, retired superintendent, just thanking the board. I'll let you, is that large enough that you can read?
Yes.
Thank you, Lisa.
Okay. Next item is adjournment. So at this time, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Putt. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Oh boy, I don't know who did that one. But
Just pick one.
I'm just gonna say Mr. Ludwig because I saw his hand raised. Okay. Any further questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion carries. We're adjourned. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to our committee meetings, which curriculum is the first committee meeting for this evening.
Excellent. I'm going to turn it right over to Annette. Dr. Spagnolo, you have got the floor.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you. I have this evening for you a few presentations that are going to look a little different than they've looked in the past, and that's a lot because of what we were not able to accomplish in the spring during COVID. But the first presentation is our data review, and due to not being able to have a lot of the data on test scores, state test scores, I did add some additional data in just to kind of give us some baseline. So what you have here is this year's beginning of the year Study Island math benchmark testing for our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. As you can see, it doesn't look like the percentages are that far off than where they were last year. I will say that the beginning of the year Study Island test is actually what students should know at the end of that school year. So we don't expect kids to master and have advanced and proficient scores at the beginning of the year, but it does help us differentiate for those students that are above level and need a little more differentiation to push them. So this is that for Study Island math.
So before you move forward, Dr. Spagnolo, so 4th grade, we're showing 8.2 basis points lower in 2020. Do we have any idea why?
Well, a lot of it could be just with COVID at the end of the year, the students were learning math online versus face to face. But it's also a different group of kids, Mr. Connell. So until we get the mid-year data, I don't really want to speculate what the difference is with the lower numbers, because it could very easily be that the kids weren't taught a certain part of, like, say, geometry or algebraic expressions, and that's what hit hard at that grade level. So
Okay.
I'll bring this data back in after they take the mid-year assessment in January, and then we'll be able to see where we are at that point. But that's a very good point.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So this is one thing that I wanted to bring to your attention, and this is our reading students that are at or above benchmark at the beginning of the year. 2020-21 is in purple, so if you look at that chart, we're significantly lower than we were for first, second, and third grade in the previous years. For our first graders that are at or above benchmark, we're at 26% right now. Second grade, we're at 28%, and third grade, we're at 31%. Even though we're seeing the drastic decline in our beginning of the year testing, what I do want to say is from the February testing that we did on our students, Dr. Kepler, if you could go to the next slide. For our students that tested in February, we had 63% of our students maintain or increase their reading level from February, 35% maintained or increased their reading level, and 41% of third graders. So what that means is each year there's a new benchmark of what is expected at that grade level. So what we can surmise from this is that our students, we had many less hours of reading instruction during COVID from March till May. And the students were not taught or were not exposed to reading they were exposed to it, but there was less reading from March till September. So our suspect is when we test these students again in November, we're going to see a drastic increase of the students that were just a little rusty. These assessments were given like the first week of school. The students had like 1 or 2 days, and then we started assessing students. So our hope is that we're going to see a big increase in November, but data is data, and I felt like we needed to share this as well. What this also goes to say is we asked the board to provide us with some Journeys materials last year, if you remember, for our first and second graders. And this data shows that those supplies and resources that were purchased are going to go to good use this year.
So I'd definitely be interested in November benchmarks, right? Because this is 50% of the prior year, right? At or above benchmark. And so that's a little bit, it's concerning, but hopefully we make up some ground there and get those kids back up to the level they need to be.
Yeah, it was quite concerning to us too, President. The next result, what I want to share with you is we, last year we did some piloting on some teaching of some phonics and phonemic awareness. And what I have here for you is just some raw data on how we're testing every student in first, second, and third grade. And what you'll find is the colors, benchmark is blue. That's the percentage of students that are at benchmark for that grade level. Strategic shows those students that still need some work to do. And the orangish is the color of the kids that need significant support. What I'm showing here, and Dr. Kepler, you can go to second and third grade as well. what I'm showing here is we also, in addition to the Journeys, which has a very strong phonics connection, we also are having our students do a program called Haggerty beginning in kindergarten and first grade. So a lot of these individual skills we are now teaching with fidelity, and we're intentionally teaching these skills. So as the years go on and more students start from kindergarten on up, these percentages will increase. And by the end of third grade, it's expected that they are 100% in all of these individual skills. So this isn't really, that wasn't really anything to share like was lower than what we wanted. This is truly baseline data of what we know our students to know and be able to do before we really start these direct interventions for reading. So the next 12, 14 slides are our AP testing. Even though our students were not taking Keystones or PSSA testings, our students that took advanced placement classes had the ability to pay for some testing. Now, all of the AP testing was done differently in June of last year, but what I wanted to show you is the results of these students. So our students that were taking AP classes are high level learners. In 19 and 20 for biology, we had 9 students take the test. We had 1 that scored a 5, 1 that scored a 4, 1 that scored a 3, 5 that scored 2s, and 1 that scored a 1. So generally colleges, it really depends on the college what number is appropriate. Most colleges, almost all colleges take 4s and 5s. And what that means is if a student scores a 4 or 5 on one of these assessments, they generally can go back and not take a class at the college level. They'll be kind of grandfathered in. Depending on what your major is, it might not be like biology in college. It might be, well, we still want you to take our biology, but one of the classes that's a core general ed class, you can then take a different, whatever you want to take, or you don't have to take a 3-credit class. This would kind of go in as a 3-credit holder that you've already had. A lot of colleges take 3s as well. Chemistry, in the spring, we had 20 students that took the chemistry exam. Nobody scored a 5, 5 people scored a 4, 10 people scored a 3, 4 people scored a 2, and 1 person scored a 1. So 15 of our 20 students taking the test will be able to use and bank their scores to help them. I apologize, I'm out front and the lights just went out. Will be able to bank their scores, and that will help them not take a test or not take a course in college. So as you just go on, physics, another one, 15 students took the test, 2 scored 5s, 8 scored 4s, 5 scored 3s, and we didn't have anybody score a 2 or a 1. AP Calculus, Calculus AB, 19 students took that. 1 scored a 5, 2 scored 4s, 3 scored 8s, 6 scored 2s, and 2 people scored a 1. So, and I can, do you want me to continue to go through each of these, or we're good?
I think you're good, yeah.
Okay. So BC Calculus is the course that's, it's a higher level course than the AB Calculus. We had 12 students take that exam. 2 scored 5s, 4 scored 4s, 3 scored 3s, 3 scored 2s, and nobody scored a 0. Or nobody scored a 1, I apologize. Statistics, very similar for 1920, 21 students took the test, and we had 18 of those 21 score a 3, 4, or 5. Microeconomics, we had 23 total students take the test, and we had 18 of those 23 23 score a 3, 4, and 5. Psychology, very popular one. We had 56 students take the assessment, and we had 50 of those 56 score a 3, 4, or 5. Computer science A, we had 9 students take the test. 7 scored a 3, 4, or a 5. English language, we had 46 students, and we had 28 students score a 3, 4, or 5. English literature, we actually had less students take the test, but this is also a course now that Harrisburg University offers, that students can take it at Harrisburg University, and it transfers as an AP course, so students do not have to take the AP exam, which is why I believe we have less students taking. We had 8 total students taking it, and 5 of the 8 scored a 3, 4, or 5. And then the very last one was art design, 2D design. We had 3 students take it, and all 3 students scored a 3 or a 4. Data that was not available this year, just so I can be transparent, is we don't have data from Keystone exams because they were waived last year. Our PSSA tests were waived, as well as the NOCTI. So there will be a blip in the yearly bar graphs for those tests because they were not offered last year. We're still waiting to hear if we are going to waive the Keystone and PSSA test this year as well. There is a Senate bill out there that we believe is going to be passed. Dr. Kepler, I'm not sure if you have any answers on that or not.
No, they're ultimately, the Commonwealth is seeking waivers from the USDE to get permission to have some changes to testing this year.
So that brings me to questions. Anybody have any questions, comments? If not,
I would just say, I just want to just say, as someone who's, son's getting the benefit of, a couple of these AP classes right now in college, it's a tremendous opportunity we offer our students. Dr. Spagnuolo, to your point, there's, if you score a 4 or 5, the schools will even let you opt out of classes in your major. So the relief, even if it's not enough to save a semester of school or anything, the relief and stress that takes off of a student in college really can't be stated in dollars.
I agree, Mr. Kreiser, that's accurate. As my own personal children have benefited from that. The next data presentation I would like to share is our student data related to our social emotional learning. One thing I do want to share with this data is you will see that it is, we are lower from July 2020 to present in almost all of our areas of foster care, homeless, non-educational placements outside of the home, and school-based therapy. I would like to say that's a trend upward, and that means our students are not needing these services. But unfortunately, what I believe, and truly it's my belief, not 100% fact, is that the placements and the school-based therapy were not open during COVID, and some of them are not doing face-to-face therapies to date. So some of the numbers that are less are due to some of the agencies not providing the services or just starting to provide the services in the last couple weeks. I will bring you additional data on this as the year goes on, but I wanted to bring that to you as well. And then Cougar Academy numbers. I know we talked last time about the amount of money it's costing us for Cougar Academy and some of our cyber schools. And I thought just putting like factual numbers in front of you to let you know that from what the numbers look like in 2018, 2019, and then how much they've jumped in 2020. So our Cougar Academy has a total of 371 students participating, either part-time or full-time. We have 148 part-time students, which are mostly our high school students, and we have 223 full-time students, and that is up from 19 the year before. So I have to give kudos to Dr. Knutson, Dr. Mahaffey, and the entire Cougar Academy team. But when we asked for some additional teachers to support that program this year, these were the reasons and the students that are benefiting from that type of learning.
Wow. That's 19, what did you say? 230?
223.
223. Jeez.
So
and I apologize, Dr. Spagnola, for not seeing everything, but of those 223, how many are full-time enrolled versus just like one class or what have you?
So yeah, so there's a total of 371 students this year. The 220
wow.
students that are fully enrolled in Cougar Academy, and then we have 148 students. 125 of those, which are high school students that are taking one course or 2 courses at home.
Wow. Yeah. Shoot. Okay. Wow.
So it's three times plus what we had last year in Cougar Academy. And even the late, I mean, kudos to our teachers in Cougar Academy and our learning coaches in Cougar Academy. Their course load and their student load is double what our Cougar Academy teachers had last year. And they're making it work, and it's being very successful.
Good to hear.
At this point, we are asking to put a hold on our Cougar Academy enrollment just due to the high numbers we currently have. So that's something that we are looking at, having a wait list and really truly looking at whether we are able to enter new students or not, depending on the individual needs and what's happening, with COVID and, just with a couple other personal items that students have that, they may need to switch. But at this point, we're really looking at limiting that. So let me just be clear. The students are currently in Cougar Academy will remain in Cougar Academy. We're not interested in moving kids out of Cougar Academy, but should new students be interested in enrolling, depending on the grade level and the courses, I'm not quite sure what the availability will be.
Okay, so just before we move on to the next item, as a reminder, if you have any questions that you would like to ask as related to the curriculum and instruction committee items being reviewed, please raise your hand before we get to item number 2, public comment. Okay, next item.
And then we have the flexible instructional day. What I did here is just attached the final approved plan for our flexible instructional day. I have to be honest with you, we started this prior to COVID, and knowing what our options were with COVID and having students learn synchronously and our health and safety plan. This has been a fun joy to get approved. It was returned to me several times out of true transparency. And as I talked to my other colleagues across Lebanon and Lancaster County, they've all witnessed the same things. Very specifically, they want the flexible instructional day to be used only if we pretty much know a blizzard is coming. They want to make sure every student has a paper copy of the assignments or that their assignments are downloaded. So internet is not an issue for our families that don't have internet. So pretty much in very plain language, if every single student in the district isn't able to have school that day for the reason of not having access to it or not having the materials, they don't encourage us to use it as a flexible instructional day. There's a lot of wording that I tried to get in there to state, well, then, maybe we could use it on the day that's supposed to be a snow makeup day, and that could be a flexible instructional day for our families, like around holidays. And they said, absolutely not, that's not permitted. So there were very few deviations from what they considered appropriate. I will say it's approved till 2020, the end of 2023. So as we get hopefully back to normal, as in what we had prior to COVID, this will be used for our snow days when we know well in advance that there's a possibility that we'll be home due to, a forecast of multiple inches.
So I think it's great that, we got the approval, and thank you for all your hard work. At the same time, I get a little bit concerned with these flexible days, right? Because basically it just, it's just a kid sitting in front of a computer, right? Doing schoolwork, and we wind up missing the in-person instruction. So that does concern me quite a bit, and probably something that we need a little bit more, or at least a little bit more education for the board members, I guess you could say, around how that's going to be handled.
Yeah. And I think, Mr. President, I think a lot of this, the intent of this from the begin with is when we had multiple days of blizzard type weather and students were going to school towards the end of June. I think the purpose of this was to not have school be extended that long. But I 100% agree with you. It's, there's only 5 days that are available per year. And I think we need to use them with sparingly. We need to really look at the intent. Luckily, Dr. Kepler and I as a team didn't have any snow days last year. So I think with us working together, that's going to just be what happens moving forward. So we won't need to do this, and we won't need to use this anyway.
That's good. You'll make a lot of people happy.
So, and honestly, thank you for thanking me, but this was probably, in my opinion, one of the easiest things to fill out, but yet one of the most challenging, because filling it out, I wasn't using the correct verbiage. And when I say several of my colleagues had it returned just as many times, if not more. And it just was more difficult than it looks to get approved. And I think, Dr. Kepler, that is it for me.
Okay, so we'll move on to public comment. And Mr. Laudermilch, can you say hi?
Hello?
All right, Dave, you have the floor.
Oh, great. Thank you. I have two questions, and the answers may be lengthy, so I'm just going to ask them both and then wait for the answers. So one, Dr. Spagnuolo, I saw your chart there on the math and understand that the kids are being tested on something that they'll learn throughout the year. So that doesn't concern me as much as the English part of the testing. So my question is, do you think that those kids will make up through the course of the year, and at the end, will be where they need to be, or because of last year, it will take another year for them to catch up and where they will be, or the end of fifth grade? Like by the end of elementary, will they catch up? Will this take some time? Or like you don't anticipate that some of these kids will just get left behind as far as their ELA learning? And then my second question is for Dr. Kepler around the Cougar Academy, which is just fantastic, and the number of students you have there and you're able to support. And I understand, you need to turn people away at this point, even though that's not your preference, I would imagine from a budgetary standpoint. So my question would be, for the Cougar Academy moving forward in your budgeting process for next year, what do you anticipate to be budgeting for that? What would your wish list for the Cougar Academy look like for next year as far as a budget to support a fully staffed, fully functioning Cougar Academy? And I understand there wouldn't be nearly as many students as this year, but have you gotten feedback so far where 40 parents have said, this is great for our family as a solution to learn, and we would continue that on even post-COVID? Or what the Cougar Academy will look like as you're putting together for a budget next year? Because it's certainly something, an offering I think I'm really excited about in the district. As I talk to other parents and taxpayers, it is certainly something we want to get behind and be advocating for as the process moves forward. So that's my two questions.
Dr. Spagnuolo, will you take yours first?
Sure. So I would say I would hope that I had a crystal ball and that our students would gain whatever they lost by the end of the first year. I think I will be able to probably, Mr. Laudermilch, give you a more educational opinion after we have the testing in November to see. Many of our teachers and many of our staff believe that it was the testing we had at the beginning of the year maybe isn't as accurate as what it will be in November.
Oh, okay.
That the kids didn't necessarily lose it, but they weren't in school for so long doing that type of assessment that it might have just needed, a couple weeks to get the cobwebs out and for them to, kind of push forward. Once students regain their sounds and know things, the learning is going to come quickly. But I would say that we are differentiating more than we ever have in the past. And that's what we're going to need to do, is meet the kids where they're currently at and take them. My goal or my hope is that, if they don't catch up by the first year, it would only take maybe another half a year. But again, only having a first benchmark assessment, I really can't give an educational opinion on that yet.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
And regarding Cougar Academy, for background, we funded some additional staff through some of the CARES funding that we have, and we're able to fund some of that for the 21-22 school year as well. But how we put additional staffing there was through some transfers. Not having a full day kindergarten session allowed us to have a teacher help support Cougar Academy. Utilizing we were able to go down an additional kindergarten teacher to help support elementary Cougar Academy. One of our challenges will be and again, it's proportionate. If more kids come back to brick and mortar, we'll have a need for less staff and can reinstitute full day kindergarten or put folks back into that kindergarten staffing. So from a budgetary perspective, my goal would be to not increase, hopefully, that our bottom line, just based on, again, it's early, but I don't know that we're going to have the luxury to add staffing in that program. Our hope would be to utilize the staff in special ed where we use the CARES funds, and again, we truly believe that the best place for kids is in front of a teacher in a classroom. So hopefully in 21-22, we're in closer to a more normal year given the pandemic and have more kids back that we wouldn't need to staff it as heavily.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Laudermilch. We'll move on to our next committee meeting as we have no others have raised their hands. So the next item is Staffing and Administration.
Thank you, Mr. Connell. Some various policies here centered around health, obviously, and these items come from PSBA's policy services. Try to highlight some things. Again, they're pretty benign changes, some citation changes based on the legal citations. Immunizations, it was recommended that we add language that's or in accordance with programs or guidance established by the Department of Health. Under communicable diseases, and I think you'll see this through many of these policies, there were just some wordsmithing. And then some more language changes, or like that. I think that's part of our current policy. It's just the red that's new. So students being required to be picked up from school immediately, depending upon the diagnosis. Again, that's more COVID related. Health and safety plan language. And then language there about disclosing information from health records to appropriate parties in connection with an emergency. That's the immunization piece. The HIV infection, very similar. Types of language changes. Again, wordsmithing. Notifications about HIV infection and policy. That's again minimal change there. Under medications, language change to from every 2 years to as necessary. The items that students may possess when there was changes with the diabetes management, so students may carry their own glucagon or insulin. How medication is delivered, that at the high school level, students do at times hand deliver a prescribed medication directly to the nurse. So that's covers that one. And then the last is just simply the form that accompanies the medication. So just some small recommendations from PSBA.
Any questions on the board policies first reading? Okay, please review them in between now and the second reading, and any changes we'll take care of then. Before we get into the dashboard presentation, again, I just need to announce again, if you want to speak as part of the Staffing Administration Committee meeting on the topics being discussed, please make sure you raise your hand within the meeting. Thank you.
I'm guessing, Darcy, you want me to go to slide 1.
Yeah. There you go. All right. Last year was the first year we developed this dashboard presentation, and I think it works very well to continue that. There are 2 sections: annual metrics that I'm only updating once a year, and now with most of our annual financial reporting done for 1920, and with release of a full year of a lot of subsidy data from PDE, I was able to update this section, and then we get to a quarterly metrics section, which has a lot to do with how our finances look during the year, and that I'll be continuing to update quarterly. Fund balance as a percentage of expenditures. Last year we pointed out how if you start at the bottom and you look how our fund balance percentages, we had some one-time favorable variances from refinancing and some other savings, and some strong revenues. So by the end of 6/30/18, fund balance as a percentage of expenditures was up to 11.4%. Our target range per policy is to stay within 4 to 8%. So we had a planned transfer to capital projects fund of $2.5 million. That funded, all of that funding went to the renovations at Northside and allowed us to do that project at the scope that we did without borrowing any additional money. So then we got these, as you can see, these past 2 years, we're back down to the range of within our targeted range. And the next slide just shows a graphical presentation of that unassigned fund balance. Next slide is tracking our expenditures and expenditures per student. And again, because if you in 6/30/2019, you'll see that our expenditures jumped up to $55,781,000. That's because that $2.5 million transfer, as accounting practices for school districts, we were required to have that included in expenditures. So our expenditures per pupil jumped up, and then you can see our expenditures for the past school year were actually lower than the previous year. So that expenditures per student came down. And ADMs, that's acronym for average daily membership. It's taking student days. It's a point in time, but it's similar to an enrollment number. The graph slide shows what our expenditures per student are compared to the average expenditures per student in the IU, which is in orange, and you can see how we're consistently lower. I only have that we're a year behind in that data. So for 18-19, which was just released, the average for the IU was 17,825 versus our 15,123. And keep in mind that that's even with the 2.5 million in there, and that number is goes down in 1920. Then this is how we compare to the state. Last year, we were 489 out of 500 school districts. Again, that's with the lowest spending that 11 school districts in the state in 17-18 spent less per student than we did. Now, with that 2.5 million in there in the 18-19 data, our standing came up a little bit to 441, but in 1920, I would expect us to fall down further to the bottom again.
Well, and I would just say, Darcy, I don't know that it's necessarily our goal to try to race to be 500 necessarily either. So,
no.
You know, somewhere in the middle isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Mm-hmm. Where we are as we start the budget process, projecting for 21-22, the projected value of $1 million of real estate taxes generates $2,031,600. But under Act 1, we can't even do a $1 million increase because that would be 6.4%, which would be substantially higher than the index. So we typically look at it of what does a 1% tax increase generate? So for 21-22, that would generate $317,500, and we also look at 0.25% increments. And that these projections are assuming we would return to normal tax collection rates pre-COVID. This just shows you where we are compared to the rest of the county with our real estate millage rate. And I did add a column this year because because one district in the county does have a higher EIT rate, which makes it makes it a little more difficult to compare real estate mills. If you should factor in where there's a difference in EIT rate as well. This is a slide that it's been interesting to share over the years. Our tuition rate set by the state based on our expenditures for 1920 was about $9,500, and we look at using that blended tuition rate. What does it cost to educate a child for 12 and a half years? And then dividing that by the annual real estate taxes for the average assessed home. The number of years of paying real estate taxes to pay for educating one child would be 37 years, and to pay for two children, almost 75 years. So it's just been useful when people have looked at and said, well, we should be bringing in a lot of revenue with all the new homes that have been built in Palmyra School District, but it really isn't. It's that enrollment growth hurts us more. Go back one, Bernie. I'm sorry. You're on the right. Market value we track. That's the state provides that, the value of all of the real estate within the district. You can see that's very healthy trend there, that's been steadily growing. And then the market value aid ratio, that's based on, we look at how that grows based on how quickly our student population is growing as well. And then that aid ratio is used in subsidy calculations. So for example, we're about middle of the road in wealth. A very affluent district would have a lower market value aid ratio, and a poorer school district would typically have a much higher market value aid ratio. So then that percentage is applied in subsidy formulas, and the higher that rate then provides a way to adjust in subsidies for the wealth of the district. So it's just something we make sure we're watching any changes there annually, but just don't see anything concerning there. Then similarly, the state also tracks personal income by district. And for those of you that prepare your own taxes, there's a code that you put on your state tax return. That's your school district code. Then the state adds up all of that, the personal income by district. Then they actually send reports to districts so we can make sure that reflects all the zip codes submitted accurately reflect our district. That's a time-consuming process that someone on our staff does each year, but we think it's very important to weed out any and to make sure this number is accurate. So if we see a group of zip codes that aren't in Palmyra, we'll send that back to the state so this number can be as accurate as possible. But again, nice steady growth in the personal income in the district. And then there's also a market value personal income aid ratio. That's the relative wealth using market value end income compared to enrollment. And that goes in some subsidy calculations as well. And again, we're about the middle of the road there in terms of wealth. Our free and reduced lunch data is provided here. That's been creeping up steadily over the last few years. If you look at the total, I would say that I think I'm speculating that this 26.3% is probably low compared to reality because we're able to offer free meals because of that summer program being extended. It's now been extended through the entire school year, which is great. But even though we've encouraged all parents to submit free and reduced lunch applications, they don't have to get a free lunch. So that's just my speculation that that 26.3%, that the reality of that could be higher. Against a graphical presentation there. Next slide shows you the history of under Act 1 all the way back to 07-08, what our actual tax percentage real estate mill tax increases have been since then, and then compared to what the index has been. And I think the next slide, it gives a really good depiction graphically where the index is the red line, and then you can see the blue where we were above the index and where our tax increase was above or below the index. And those years where it's above, that's typically matched up to when Lingle Avenue was open, when we were borrowing, when we borrowed for the middle school, and all the way back to 07-08 when we were had renovations at the high school. History of special ed expenditures. There's a report that we're required to file each year where we track the number of special ed students where our district spending is greater than 25,000, greater than 50, and greater than 75,000. And just in the interest of transparency, those numbers are adjusted each year for inflation. So it's actually, for this year, instead of 25,000, I think it was around 26,600. So those numbers do inch up each year, but a very concerning trend to see how those numbers continue to increase each year, and that is very much a cost driver for us in our budget. There, just another, taking a look at that graphically. Just before we go into quarterly, I went through that pretty quickly. Any questions on the annual metrics?
Not for me so far.
All right. Then quarterly, what our approach has been is that because when we start the year, once we know our state and federal subsidies, the three other line items that are really critical to, how are we going to do with hitting our budgeted revenues? We're looking at real estate revenues, earned income taxes, and real estate transfer taxes. If we look at these three line items, and then of course we know the state and federal subsidies, we've got 97% of our revenue covered. So these three revenue line items are the ones we're highlighting to watch. Natural real estate growth is important to us. Our trend has been for the last 5-6 years that we're growing our natural growth, the additions to the tax rolls, less any adjustments for appeals. And the assumption we use for our long range projections is natural growth is going to be 1%. And if you recall back when we were talking about what does 1% tax increase generate, $317,500. Well, it's the same thing with the natural growth. If we grow by 1%, that's going to generate an increase in revenue of $317,000. So for this year, if we're going to be on track to have that 1% growth, we need to see almost $21 million in additions to the tax rolls. I would certainly say that I'm seeing that growth trend has slowed since COVID. Our additions this year through October 2nd, we get this report monthly from the county, from Assessment Bureau, just under $4 million. And then last year when we didn't quite hit that 1%, we were actually 0.84%. And we had a paper factory come in that picked up $4 million later in the year, that corrugated cardboard plant that was built and opened up on Lingle Avenue. So we had that last year and we still didn't hit that 1%. So I don't see any evidence that we'll hit 1% this year based on what we know right now. And our commercial tax appeals have also picked up. There were 4 that I attended the county hearings, the Rite Aid, 2 motels in the district, and the Palmyra Shopping Center are all active commercial appeals. We also get a report from Lebanon County Planning on a quarterly basis to let us know what is out there. And again, there's just not much on the horizon. Last year, we knew about that paper plant, an RV storage land development plan submitted for that, and the new housing development. This just was a quote that I included verbatim from Lebanon County Planning when they gave us this quarterly report. So just not a lot on the horizon right now. And I certainly think based on the trend, I mean, our trend is off due to COVID-19. Earned income tax, if you recall in our budget, we cut the budget based on projections of a loss of tax revenue. Our actual earned income tax revenue in 1920 was $3,771,000. We only budgeted $3,105,000 for this year. And if you look year to date where we are, it looks like that. I mean, it's very early in the year, but last year at this time we had 5.3% in hand. And right now we have 5.4% of that lower budget in hand. So while it seems a good thing to be on track to hit the budget, I'm certainly not happy about, I mean, what we budgeted was a 17% reduction. Real estate transfer tax, actually, that's doing very well. That's actually higher than last year. And we had reduced that budget as well from $560,000 was the actual last year. We reduced that budget to $400,000, and we've had $200,000 come in already in real estate transfer taxes. And I definitely, your July through September are your heavier part of the year when construction's finishing and there's more moving. That does tend to slow down in the winter months, but that's very encouraging. But again, it's early in the year.
And is that a result of, COVID lifting and some people being able to perform transactions, and there's a catch up there, right?
I didn't see it in the trend. We have what, July, August, September. The 3 months in hand are very comparable to the previous year. So okay. I don't have it just seems like it has continued to be on track. The amount of churn, I guess, in real estate transfers.
Okay.
Then on the expenditure side, again, we try to narrow this down at the beginning of the year. I mean, as long as we stay on track with salaries and benefits, that's 67% of our budget, and the board would have to approve any unbudgeted positions. Our debt service is 15% of the budget. So the line items that we're concentrating on monitoring here on this dashboard are cyber tuition, special education placements, staff turnover, and self-insured health claims. Our other line items are about 13%, 3% of that's transportation, and 10% would be under department budgets, operations and maintenance, building budgets, supplies budgets. Before I get to that, I put this in here. Bernie, you can go to that slide. Put this in here as an analysis to show you our enrollment, how things moved around this year. Annette and Dr. Spagnola was talking about the Cougar Academy now, and what I'm showing here is the total PASD enrollment on one line that includes Cougar Academy, but these are all our kids that we're educating. And when we looked at that number, that shows that our enrollment went down 87 students, but certainly wanted to get a sense of, have we tracked where kids have moved? Homeschooling is up by 49, and then the outside cyber charters are up by 52. So if you look at it in total, we would have seen slight growth of 14. And this doesn't include non-publics. We don't track a number of students in non-pubs in our system at all. But just kind of gives you I thought it was an interesting story of where kids moved, how kids moved around. Then the not so good news of where our budget is taking a hit because of that increase of 50 cyber charter students. We budgeted for 99. So where we are right now with current enrollments in cyber schools, that will generate a shortfall in that budget line item of almost $500,000. All right, just
going back on that slide, Darcy.
Mhm.
The special ed number. So I know we said 99, but of the 99, how many special ed?
Actually, last year's special ed enrollment was 37. So the special ed enrollment dropped.
Okay, so it's just the regular ed that is showing the increase. Okay.
Yep. Parent choice. But certainly is going to make it very challenging in budget during the budget process of, what assumption do we use? What do we think will happen? Do we think this will stay the same in another year at these elevated numbers, or will kids return to us to in-person education and be able to cut that line item, or are we going to need to budget at this level?
I guess one saving grace is that our budget doesn't have to be done till June, so we still have some time to see where this whole situation lands, and maybe that'll again give us a better idea of what the future is going to hold.
Right, give us a chance to conduct more surveys and
just see, as we say, return to normal, right? I mean, really return back to normal. If we can do that in September, I still would expect that some people would still keep their kids in some kind of cyber school program. The question is, what's that percent going to be? Is it going to be 121 kids, or are we back to 99 or something like that?
And what we're experiencing here, this is absolutely normal. This is what other districts across the state are seeing as well. We're not, I don't think we're seeing any type of unusual jump that other school districts aren't experiencing as well. I've, seen articles that said cyber charter schools in the state are experiencing 50% increases. So certainly a windfall there.
Yeah, and the issue is just if we don't factor better, right? I mean, what fund balance we do have starts to get chewed away pretty quick if we're off by $500,000 in these budget estimates every year because of those numbers. So I think we have to be looking at that. And yes, we'll know more information as we head into next year, but we probably have to start factoring this trend. And if the legislature isn't going to address anything, we have to hedge our bets a little bit. Otherwise, we'll literally run out of money in 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, I know the legislators are being made aware of this. Hasbo's packaging is collecting this data across the state for advocacy efforts. Special ed placements, we are absolutely right on line with our budget there. That's another big ticket item and certainly a cost driver, but good news there is no move-ins, and we are right on track with our budget. The staff turnover rates and vacancies, Noel, our HR director, is tracking this. Good news right now, if you look to that last column, current vacancies, we only have 2. And then this just gives you the reflection of the kind of turnover we've had and what kind of hiring. And then lastly, our self-insured health claims. We talked about this at the last board meeting as well, that we had a very nice steady trend for 3 years of actual. And we also, before we went self-insured, we had data that was right in line, that we had 4 years of a very steady trend, and that jumped up by $700,000 in claims in 1920. Increased the budget somewhat in anticipation of continued higher claims, but not, our thought was that was, typically when you're self-insured, every 5 to 7 years you have a bad year. Although we still are not seeing that slow down year to date. If you look at where we were last year, which was a bad year, with 3 months of data, we were at 987,000. This year to date, we're at 1,018,400. So that would, if that trend continues through the end of the year, I would estimate that we'd have an unfavorable variance there of 380,000. Again, I think it's early in the year for this line item, and we do have a reserve. We have $1.1 million in committed fund balance for these bad claim years. And then we have 2 slides that just show that in graphic form, what the history of actual and where we budgeted, and then where we are on the last one, year to date. That's what we've got.
Okay. So, any questions on the dashboard presentation?
The other thing I don't know, Darcy, if it's something we should add, is we didn't put in there the uptick in Cougar Academy prices. We're thinking with all those students that we're now educating through Cougar Academy, that's an additional $500,000 for the textbooks, the resources, and all of the K-12 curriculum that we purchase. So that's also a budget item that we did not budget for as well.
Okay. All right, so we'll move on to public comment, and we only have one person that raised their hand, Mr. Laudermilch. Can you say hi?
Hi there.
There you go. Floor is yours.
Darcy, what's the maximum amount? Is it 3.3% again that taxes could be raised this year?
3.8%.
3.8%.
Yeah.
So I'm going to step out on a limb here and with an unpopular opinion, and I'm not sure how it'll be taken by the board, but don't take what I say at a negative light. But I'm going to be pushing again this year for a full maximum 3.8% increase to the taxes this year. Last year, 3.3%. I don't find it acceptable as a parent and as a taxpayer in this district that we are 440 something out of 500 districts as far as our spending per student. I find that offensive. That is terrible. So this year also, I'm going to be pushing for a more than equitable teacher contract. I know that is coming up. We can't have the lowest paid teachers in the county. I find that offensive. I find that unacceptable. We need to not take such a conservative approach over the next couple of years with this budget. I know the board likes to do that. I know they like to find a middle ground, but we keep just barely kicking the can down the road. We have to get ahead of this curve at some point. We have to invest in this district. We have to, I agree with Mr. Kreiser. Our goal is not to be the #1 spending district in the state. We shouldn't be #1, but we shouldn't be number 500 either. We shouldn't be approaching number 500. This is a great district with great teachers, with great test scores, doing great things. We can't continue to keep half-assing this budget the way we have been. We have to get ahead of the curve and build up what we have so that great teachers want to come here. Great teachers already teach here. We don't want to lose them. We want to keep them, and we want to keep great teachers coming to this district. We want our children to have the best educational experience they can, whether that's live in the classrooms or whether it's via the Cougar Academy, however it is. But we have to begin spending more money, and raising taxes is what we're gonna have to do on that. I know it's not popular, and I know it's going to take some time. It's going to take probably 1 to 3 budget cycles to get where we need to be. But that's what we have to do as a district, and I'm going to be advocating for that at almost every board meeting moving forward. I have a long, months-long head start this year as opposed to last year. And I think that my view is shared by many parents in this district, that when they review these type of numbers, and this is a great dashboard that Dorothy put together. I have some of the same figures myself, and I'd say they're not happy with the way the district ranks as far as the way we spend our money and advocate or allocate the tax dollars that we're putting into this district.
I'll just say to that, I'm glad you're not in any position of authority at all, and hopefully it stays that way. I'll listen to what the majority of the voters have to say on that, not just you.
Oh, don't worry, Mike. You are going to hear what the voters have to say in this spring primary. 100% loud and clear. You're going to get a sense of what this community thinks.
So we have a long way to go with budget, right? And budget kicks off in December. So let's pay attention to it more in the December timeframe and try not to deflect too much. Certainly want, us to be very cognizant of what we have to do, the challenges we have in front of us, and all the other things that go along as part of the process.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And just one thing, Darcy, just to make sure we're clear and transparent to the public, the maximum amount we can take is not index. We have even further exceptions above that for special ed we could take.
Yes.
I'm not making any statement of what I'm in favor of. I'm not trying to create any discussion on that. I think it's important to start a foundation of a discussion of transparency that the maximum amount is not just index. We keep saying that. It is not true. We could even take more. I'm not saying that's what I'm in favor of, but I think just to be clear to the public and what they hear, the maximum is not index. Can you clarify that? Am I wrong?
Yeah, and on our budget timeline at the next finance committee in November, now that our financial report's done, I can calculate the value of that exception and give you the exact number at the next meeting. But the only exception I believe we'll qualify for going forward is special ed, and that is when special ed expenditures the increase exceeds the index. There is an equivalent amount that you can apply for an exception to raise taxes above the index. And I believe we typically qualify for an additional amount due to the way our special ed costs have been rising. But I do think they are starting to slow. That increase is actually starting to slow down. So.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to get into a big discussion of what the amount is or whatever else. Just purely on definitions, we have to stop saying that the index is the maximum. That is not correct. It was not correct last year. It is not correct this year. I'm just looking for you to confirm that, not recalculate or forecast what it's going to be. Can we just all agree, can we get an affirmation that the maximum allowable is not index? That's not the maximum. Can we agree on that?
Yeah, I mean, I confirm that's accurate.
The maximum is index plus exceptions. That's the way to say it.
Exactly. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we have no other public comment. So at this time, we will close the public committee sessions and move into our executive session. Just before everybody leaves this meeting, do you want to take a break, not take a break, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, opinions? I can move right in.
Yeah, let's just move right into it.
I would go right in.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's just do
Right
it.
in.
All right. We'll see you on the executive side then.